Wow, this time you've really sent us a fascinating collection of stuff about Texas. Articles, videos. It seems like you want to get to the heart of what makes Texas, well, Texas.
Yeah, it seems like you're interested in going beyond the typical tourist attractions and really understanding what makes this state so unique.
For sure. And you've given us so much great material to work with. To be honest, the first thing I zeroed in on was that video about Texas barbecue. Man, oh man, that slow smoke brisket, the spices, the whole process, just mouth-watering.
It's true, Texas barbecue is legendary. But those videos you sent, they actually highlight how food, especially barbecue, reflects something deeper about the state. It's about tradition, heritage, bringing those things together. And we see those themes pop up again and again, especially when we look at the arts and cultural scenes, like what's happening in Dallas and Houston, for example.
Right. Like the Dallas video, it talks about the city having this incredible diversity of food. Over 70 countries represented in its restaurants. 70, that just blew my mind. Not to mention the art scene there, really pushing boundaries. And then there's Houston.
Don't even get me started on Houston. I mean, 11,000 restaurants, that's got to be some kind of record.
11,000. It's insane. And the article you sent about Houston, it really highlighted how walkable the city is. You can go from world-class museums to a cutting-edge theater district all in an afternoon.
It really challenges the image some people might have of Texas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just about cowboys and, wide open spaces.
It's this whole blend of influences. Like Texas said, hey, we like that and that over there. Let's mix it all together.
And that's what makes it so interesting to explore. This idea of unexpected diversity, it even plays out as we start looking at some specific destinations you picked out.
You weren't kidding about those landscapes, were you? Mountains, deserts, beaches. It's like a geography sampler platter. Big Bend National Park looks absolutely stunning.
It really shows how diverse the state is, geographically speaking. And, speaking of interesting places, you mentioned the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge in Dallas. With those big arches.
Oh, yeah, it's gorgeous. That dramatic architecture, it's classic Santiago Calatrava. Instantly recognizable. It actually reminded me of that article you sent about urban renewal projects.
The great example of that. That bridge completely revitalized that whole area of West Dallas. I think the article said it spurred a ton of economic development.
Yeah, it said something about reconnecting the city with its waterfront, too, which is really cool when you think about it. It's not just a bridge, it's a symbol. And it actually had a real impact.
Exactly. And that idea of connection, especially through water, it comes up again and again in your research.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff about Texas rivers.
Oh, man. And speaking of water, that video of the Blanco River, the way it winds through the hill country, sometimes even going underground, I have to admit, I had no idea.
That's the karst geology
Yeah.
at work. I'd never heard of it before you sent this stuff over. Basically, the limestone bedrock dissolves, creating these sinkholes and underground waterways. Wild, right?
It makes those lazy river tubing trips seem a lot more adventurous. Speaking of nature, doing its thing, those photos of the Monaghan Sandhills just blew me away. So beautiful, but also kind of harsh, all that sand.
Right. And yet even there, life finds a way. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think about it that those sand dunes are actually stabilized by vegetation.
I know. I was reading about that. How does that even work? You'd think the wind would just, blow everything away.
It's a delicate balance. But those plants, their roots, help anchor the sand and stop it from constantly shifting.
It's amazing how we tend to think of deserts as sort of, lifeless. And then you see those photos and you realize nature is incredible, adaptable. Like, did you know that the Aransas Pass Lighthouse is the oldest surviving structure in that whole region?
Yeah, and it's still standing strong. Imagine all the storms that lighthouse has seen.
It's like a testament, to the people who built it, making something that could last even with all that wind and water.
And speaking of things that have stood the test of time, we have to talk about the Alamo.
Right. You sent that article about its history. I have to say, it gave me chills reading about that siege.
You really feel it, don't you? The weight of what happened there.
It's more than just a building, isn't it? It represents that struggle for independence.
It's interesting, though, how Texas celebrates that history, but also embraces progress at the same time. Case in point, those cattle drives in Fort Worth, they're still going strong.
It's not just a tourist thing either. You read that brochure, they're really carrying on that tradition, that connection to the land.
It's like Texas said, you know what? We're going to hold on to this, even as things change.
Exactly. It's part of their identity.
And that's what's so amazing about diving into all this stuff you sent us. You realize Texas, you can't define it with one word or one image. It's those landscapes, those cities, that independent spirit all mixed together. Well said. And, for anyone listening, if you take one thing away from this, it's don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. Look beyond the obvious, whether it's Texas or somewhere else entirely. You might be surprised by what you find.
And hey, maybe you'll be inspired to try some slow smoke brisket along the way. Until next time, happy exploring, everyone.